Okay, so last class, I know you're all excited for that. And this is probably the last time you have to hear me ramble on incessantly about the importance of feasting and power. But I promise not to talk too much about that today. What we are going to talk about is the resistance to the Roman Empire. Um, I'm not going to focus too much on Roman history, although we will talk a little bit about Caesar and the Gallic War. But what I want to kind of focus on today is that the creation of empire and states, much like what Scott talked about, also creates a group of people who are outside it. So I want to focus on the resistance to the Roman Empire in Western and Central Europe. We're going to focus primarily on its foundations, although I will show you a short clip on the fall of the Roman Empire. Because I want to kind of think about this as the state is the empire itself is creating itself. It's creating at the same time enemies through that, and so we can see the importance of resistance to that, and the identification, in particular, of the Gallic Celts through this. So we've already established this extensive trade network that Rome and the imperial core are intricately tied to surrounding societies. And the main reason that they go on expansionary campaigns is to provide more resources for for Roman society. In particular, wheat coming from North Africa and Egypt is the breadbasket of the empire. And at great cost, right? This is about a third to half of Roman wealth is redirected to feed people in Italy from wheat from North Africa and Egypt. The other third probably is directly paid to the army. So there's not a lot of other things that are going on here. So trade becomes one of the primary emphases for this expansion. So what are we looking at? Why are Romans interested in the trade networks established that are following up the Rhine corridor in modern France, Belgium, Germany, and into Britain? And that's because they need access to some of these materials, particular gold and silver, tin from England, and lead, grapes, pigs, lumber. Right, all of this is coming from this region, and it's provided a lot of wealth for the interior of the empire. Now, this trade network map is focused around the height of the Roman Empire, around 180 A.D. But we can see the same objects being important for the foundation and the conquest, and in particular of Gaul and Britannia, for the Roman Empire in the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE. And at the heart of this were the Iron Age Celts, characterized by the largest archaeological group of these, the La Tène. This is named after a site in modern Switzerland. It's represented in the historical accounts by the Helvetii, according to Caesar. But this is the largest and most archaeologically known pre-Roman Iron Age tradition in Europe, and it covers most of the Gallic Celts and into southern Britain. So traditionally, this is associated with a series of hilltop fortresses and large village settlements. La Tène is one of the few that isn't a hilltop fortress, but it's one of the largest centers of population. We have a relatively large community that we see here, maybe around 5 to 10,000 people. And it's surrounded by small agricultural villages. And so we can kind of see here continuation of those Bronze Age societies through the Hallstatt and then later the La Tène that emerged through a largely Celtic agrarian way of life, but it's also characterized by an emphasis on that warrior tradition and warfare. So these large cities and hilltop fortresses continue to control trade and raw materials. In the Hallstatt, we're talking about the Greek and Etruscans, and the La Tène with the Romans. Salt, gold, silver, lead, iron, lumber, produce, livestock, and slaves were all important trade commodities. Now, remember, as we talked about with the Hallstatt at sites like Hallstatt and Vix, trade brought prestige to local leaders, and that wealth was then redisplayed through elaborate feasting and burial offerings, in particular burial feasts, as we see at Vich and Hallstatt, with those large craters and the serving vessels that are associated with it. So a lot of that wealth is not necessarily translated into day-to-day society, but is funneled through prestige displays and burial practices. And that's what we can kind of see here within the La Tène tradition as well. We don't see a lot of overt displays like palaces and compounds that we saw that we see in Roman society at the time, large estates. But what we do kind of see is the continuation of those burial traditions and the investiture in burial practice. And all the objects you see on the slide here were found in those rich, large-scale elite burials of La Tène leaders. And it's trade with Rome that helps to prop up this system. And it would also lead to the Gallic War. By 275 BCE, the Roman Republic had consolidated control in most of Italy, and it had begun to start to encroach on the southern fringes of La Tène society. Here, in traditional Gallic areas in modern Italy, Switzerland, and southern France. So Rome engaged with numerous alliances with these Celtic groups, and that's because the Celts controlled resources that they wanted, right? Salt, gold, silver, tin, iron, right? All of those are incredibly important resources. So what we can kind of see is the buildup of a system. However, at the same time, the Roman Republic was exploiting these people, and as they were encroaching on their land, it led to a series of rebellions. The earliest of these was campaigned by Gallic groups in northern Italy and southern France that sacked Rome in 390 BCE. But these Celtic groups, right, engaged in a series of conflicts to control the Rhine trade corridor. Now, they both accepted Roman control of trade in the region, but they also rebelled by overreach. And that kind of constant fighting, constant rising up over Roman expansion, eventually led Julius Caesar to embark on a campaign to pacify the Celts. Now, that's not also to say in 60 BCE, Caesar was consul of Rome. He's one of the three most important leaders in Roman society, but he's also, because of the massive political campaigns and the debts that he had to pay to get elected, he's broke. And so Caesar here is kind of on a political public face is saying, I'm going to go deal with all these rebels on the border of the state. But in reality, Caesar's like, dude, I got to make some money. And so he sees these wars and his extremely well-trained legions that are under his control as a way to kind of create war booty to help pay off his private debts.